My brother told my fiancée I was cheating to break us up and save her from a mistake. A year later, he asked me to be his best man. I gave the toast and told everyone exactly why I couldn't be happy for them. I'm Noah, 30, male, and I'm the quiet one in a loud family. My brother, Caleb, 33, spent our whole childhood turning every room into his stage. Class clown, varsity captain, first to crash a car, and somehow get praised for surviving. I was the kid in the garage rebuilding a rusted-out Honda with a YouTube video and a prayer, the one teachers forgot to call on. Our mom, Denise, calls Caleb magnetic. Dad calls him a natural leader, which is funny because most of Caleb's leadership looks a lot like throwing people under buses with a charming smile. Grace was the first person who ever made me feel loud without raising my voice. She's 28, a pediatric nurse who wears her heartbreak like a soft sweater, willing to feel everything, willing to hold you while you can't. We met when my neighbor's dog slipped a leash and barreled into traffic. I was the idiot sprinting after it. Grace was the stranger who cut her heel on the curb and kept running anyway. I offered to bandage her foot. She laughed and did it herself in my kitchen. We ate cereal at 2 a.m., and it felt like home. Caleb liked Grace instantly. Too instantly. He would show up at our apartment with extra concert tickets and a six-pack, talking over my sentences, asking Grace the kind of personal questions that sound like compliments. How does someone so pretty work those impossible shifts? How does she keep that smile? When I teased him about flirting with my girlfriend, he raised his hands. Big brother innocence weaponized. Chill, I'm hyping you up. But it was never hype. It was a reconnaissance mission. He gathered details. The fight Grace had with her mom after nursing school, the fact that I used to date someone toxic and avoidant, how I shut down when I'm scared. He stacked our vulnerabilities like firewood. I proposed to Grace in our living room, just us, no audience. I had stupidly hidden the ring inside a box of Band-Aids because I thought I was clever, and she burst out laughing and then crying. And I thought, okay, maybe life can stop punishing me for 5 minutes. We were 6 months from the wedding when the cracks started appearing. Hairline at first, almost invisible, the way a mirror looks fine until light hits it just right. Caleb began dropping by unannounced more often. He'd stand in the doorway like he was rehearsing bad news. Hey man, don't shoot the messenger, but somebody told me they saw a girl leaving your work late. He said it breezy, like gossip was a love language. I brushed it off. I run a small auto shop. Customers pick up cars at weird hours. He nodded thoughtfully, like a pastor hearing a confession. The night before everything fell apart, Caleb helped me move a transmission into a rebuilt Mustang. Grease stained his palms like ink blots. You ever think you're not ready? He asked, the same way you'd ask if the weather might ruin a barbecue. I told him I'd never been more sure of anything. He gave me a long, unreadable look, then hugged me like he was pinning a grenade to my back. Grace showed up the next afternoon with eyes I didn't recognize. She sat on the edge of our bed, hands clenched in her lap, and said, very carefully, if there's something I need to know, tell me now. I joked about forgetting to put the seat down. She didn't smile. She pulled up her phone and showed me screenshots. A number she didn't have saved, sending her photos of me locking up the shop at midnight with a woman beside me. The images were cropped tight enough to erase context. A customer's sister picking up her car, a handshake that looked too close, an angle that turned a shadow into a kiss. The messages were signed, "You deserve better. A friend." Caleb was the only person who knew our exact schedules. He was the one who'd started asking where Grace parked at night. He'd asked if I still kept the spare key above the fuse box, like a psycho. I felt the floor tilt. Grace said, "If you love me, you won't lie." I told her I wasn't. She cried a cry I'd never heard, ripped and helpless. My throat filled with gravel. I checked the shop cameras. The footage was gone. The drive was there, but wiped. Someone who knew where I hid it. Someone with keys to my life. Grace moved out that evening with 3 boxes and my heart, and the last thing I saw was the Band-Aid box on our dresser. Empty, still stupidly hopeful looking, like it hadn't gotten the memo. Caleb came over with takeout and a furrowed brow, put his hand on my shoulder and said, "You'll thank me someday. I saved her from a mistake." I threw the takeout at the wall. The sauce splattered like a red Rorschach over our engagement photo. Caleb flinched, then smiled. He had the face of a man watching a house he'd insured burn to the ground. I remember the exact second I knew something was wrong between my brother and me. It was the way Sarah's face fell when she opened the door that night. It was a Thursday mid-September, crisp air that smelled like the first bite of autumn. I had just finished work and stopped by her place, half expecting her to greet me with that tired but warm smile she always had. Instead, she looked like she'd been crying for hours, eyes rimmed red, hair in a messy knot that said she hadn't slept. She didn't even say hi, just stepped aside and let me in like she couldn't bear to look me in the eye. We'd been engaged for 5 months. The wedding was set for June. I'd been sketching out honeymoon ideas, half joking about learning salsa dancing so we wouldn't embarrass ourselves at the reception. Things weren't perfect. We had the usual pre-wedding stresses, but we trusted each other. At least I thought we did. She sat me down on the couch and started rambling. Something about, I deserve the truth and I can't marry a liar. I couldn't even follow at first, until she dropped the line that made my stomach twist. Your brother told me you've been cheating on me. I actually laughed at first. A reflex. Not because it was funny, because it was so absurd it felt like a bad sitcom twist. But she didn't laugh back. She just stared, lips pressed thin. Apparently, my brother Matt had shown up at her work that afternoon. Said he needed to talk about something serious. Told her he'd caught me out with another woman multiple times over the past year. Said he'd tried to keep quiet, but his conscience couldn't let her walk into a marriage with someone so unfaithful. I asked if she believed him. She hesitated, just long enough to make me feel like the floor had dropped out. It didn't matter that I had no idea what he was talking about. It didn't matter that I could name every night I'd supposedly been with someone else and show exactly where I'd been. The seed had been planted, and I could see it growing behind her eyes. We argued for hours. She cried. I swore up and down he was lying. She kept asking, why would he make something like that up? And I didn't have an answer. Not yet. When I finally left, my ears were ringing. I called Matt on the drive home. He didn't pick up. Instead, he sent me a text. I did what I had to do. You'll thank me someday. That was it. No explanation. No apology. By the next morning, Sarah had called off the engagement. Said she needed space and couldn't take the risk of marrying someone she couldn't trust. I didn't see her again after that. But I saw him, 3 months later, posting engagement photos with her best friend. I stared at those engagement photos until my vision blurred. Matt and Jenna, Sarah's best friend since high school, standing in a field at golden hour, her hand on his chest, her head tilted toward him like she'd never leaned on anyone else. The caption? When you know, you know. The comments made me sick. You two are perfect together. So happy you found each other. Match made in heaven. And my mom, our mom, commented a string of heart emojis like nothing had happened. Like her younger son hadn't just been publicly gutted so the older one could have his fairy tale. For a while I thought maybe Sarah knew. Maybe she'd figured out Matt had lied, that Jenna was the real reason he'd done it. But when I reached out, she ignored me completely. The only response I got was a blocked number notification the next day. I learned the truth from Jake, a mutual friend. He'd seen Matt and Jenna together before Sarah ended things with me. At first, he thought they were just hanging out because Jenna was helping plan our wedding. But then he saw them holding hands at a bar, too close, too familiar. I didn't want to say anything until I knew for sure, Jake told me. Guess I was too late. Too late was an understatement. Over the next year, I avoided every family gathering. Christmas, Easter, my mom's 60th birthday. I found excuses to skip them all. I couldn't stand to watch Matt play the golden boy while I was treated like the bitter ex who couldn't move on. But Matt didn't like my silence. Out of nowhere, last summer, he called. I almost didn't pick up. His tone was chipper, like nothing had ever happened. Hey bro, big news. I'm getting married in the spring. I said nothing. And, he continued, I want you to be my best man. I actually laughed. Are you joking? No, he said, dead serious. We're family. This is bigger than whatever's between us. I told him there was no way I'd stand next to him after what he'd done. He brushed it off. You'll come around. 2 weeks later, a formal invitation arrived in the mail, addressed to me alone. Inside, a handwritten note from Jenna. It would mean the world if you stood with Matt on our big day. I should have thrown it away. I should have ignored it completely. But instead, something in me clicked. If he wanted me there, fine. I'd be there. But I wouldn't be giving the speech he thought I would. The months leading up to the wedding felt like walking around with a lit match in my pocket, knowing it could burn a hole through at any second. Matt texted me wedding updates, like we were close again. Links to the venue, pictures of his suit, a group chat with the groomsmen where he tagged me in dumb memes about bachelor parties. I barely replied, just enough to keep him convinced I was going along with it. Jenna, on the other hand, sent these syrupy messages about how happy she was we'd moved past the awkwardness. Every one of them made my teeth ache. Meanwhile, I was making my own preparations. I started digging. Not for dirt on Jenna. She'd been a co-conspirator, sure. But Matt was my target. I wanted receipts, screenshots from Jake about the night he'd seen Matt and Jenna together before my breakup. Old texts from Sarah where she mentioned something Matt said. Dates, timelines, proof that my brother's entire relationship was built on a lie. The more I compiled, the calmer I got. Not happier, just focused. When the rehearsal dinner rolled around, I kept my cool. Sat through the speeches, toasted their love, shook hands with Jenna's relatives. Matt was beaming like a politician who'd just secured re-election. That night, in my hotel room, I finished writing my speech. I had two versions. The polite, generic one Matt thought he was getting, and the one that would light the whole thing on fire. The morning of the wedding, I watched him pace the groom's suite, fiddling with his cufflinks. "Big day," he said, grinning at me in the mirror. "Glad you're here, bro." I just smiled back. The ceremony was flawless. Picture-perfect vows, not a hair out of place. Jenna cried pretty tears. Matt did that smug little smirk like he couldn't believe his own greatness. Everyone clapped and cheered as they walked back down the aisle. Then came the reception. Matt tapped his glass and called for everyone's attention. "Now my brother's gonna say a few words," he announced. "Best man speech, be nice to him, he's the shy one." The mic was warm in my hand. I felt every pair of eyes on me. Family, friends, Jenna's parents, even Sarah, who was there as a mutual friend of Jenna's family. I started with a joke, something about how I'd never thought I'd see the day Matt settled down. People laughed. He relaxed. And then I said, "I want to tell you all why I can't, in good conscience, say I'm happy for the groom." The room went still. Because a year ago, Matt told my fiancée I was cheating on her. He made it up. He even had fake photos. He did it so she'd leave me, so he could be with someone else. I turned my eyes to Jenna. And that someone was standing right next to her the whole time. Gasps, a dropped fork. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Matt's smile froze like wet cement. And I wasn't finished. Update 1. Well, I guess that speech landed. I figured I'd come back here and let you all know what happened after I dropped the bomb at Matt and Jenna's reception, because my phone hasn't stopped buzzing with "Your evil genius, a hero" messages since. First off, I didn't get to finish everything I'd planned to say, because Matt lost it immediately. The second I mentioned the fake cheating story, he was out of his chair, striding toward me like he was going to grab the mic out of my hand. I just held it away and kept talking. "I have proof," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "Screenshots, dates, witnesses. Jake saw them together before Sarah even knew she was single." That's when Jenna's mom stood up and actually shouted, "Is this true?" Her voice cracked so loud the DJ flinched. Jenna burst into tears right there. Ugly, loud, shoulders shaking sobs. Matt tried to put an arm around her, but she shoved him off and hissed something I couldn't catch. And then, in the middle of all that chaos, Sarah, my ex, got up from her table and walked straight out the door without looking back. People started whispering, then shouting. Someone knocked over a glass of wine. It spilled down the white linen like blood. Matt followed me outside after I stepped away from the mic. He was shaking, red-faced, spitting, You ruined my life. I told him, no, you ruined mine a year ago. This is just me evening the score. He actually swung at me, missed, but his fist went right into the brick wall behind me, split his knuckles open. Last I saw of him that night, he was being dragged into the parking lot by two of his groomsmen while Jenna sat inside with mascara streaks down her face, refusing to speak to anyone. The best part? My mom didn't say a word to me, didn't defend him, didn't scold me. She just looked small, like she'd just realized her golden boy was fool's gold the whole time. Anyway, I didn't stay for cake. But I did leave knowing one thing. Whatever happens to Matt and Jenna from here on out, they'll never be able to rewrite what I said in that room. And judging from the fact that half the guests have already unfollowed them on Instagram, I think the honeymoon might be over before it starts. The morning after the wedding, my phone lit up like it was on fire. Missed calls from my mom, my dad, two uncles, and, surprisingly, Jenna. I ignored all of them. But then I got a text from Jake. You broke them, completely. Apparently, Matt never even made it to the honeymoon suite. After I left, Jenna's parents cornered him in the kitchen of the venue. They wanted the truth. Matt doubled down, said I was jealous, and making things up to ruin their day. But then Jake, bless him, showed Jenna's mom the screenshots I'd sent him months ago. Dates, timestamps, the cropped photos Matt had used to tank my engagement. Jenna didn't even wait to get home. She ripped her veil off, tossed it on the reception table, and told Matt she needed air. That air turned into her spending the night at her parents' house. Matt, of course, tried damage control the next day. He showed up at my apartment around 10 a.m., pounding on the door hard enough to rattle the frame. I didn't open it. I just watched him through the peephole. Suit pants wrinkled, shirt untucked, eyes wild like a cornered animal. He shouted for 5 solid minutes. Threats, insults, demands. You're dead to me. You'll regret this. Do you know what you've done? I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Then his tone shifted. He started yelling about how Jenna wasn't answering his calls, how everyone in the family was taking my side. That last part made me pause. Because for the first time in my life, Matt wasn't the golden boy anymore. And that's when the real revenge idea hit me. It wasn't enough to ruin his wedding day. I wanted to ruin the story he'd built for himself, the one where he's the charming, wronged groom. I wanted everyone to see the truth, and I wanted it to come from someone other than me. So I called Sarah. She didn't answer at first, but after a few tries, she picked up, her voice guarded. I told her about the speech, about the screenshots, about Jenna walking out. There was a long silence on the other end before she said quietly, "So you were telling the truth? All along?" "Yes," I said, "and you deserve to know that." She didn't apologize. Maybe she couldn't. But she did say something that made my stomach twist. "If you want, I can tell Jenna exactly how he manipulated me." That was better than any apology. 2 hours later, Jake texted me again. Jenna's at her parents'. Sarah just left their house. Matt's officially blocked her on everything. I sat back on my couch, coffee in hand, and felt something I hadn't in a year, actual peace. Because Matt had lit the match that burned my life down. And now, he was choking on the smoke. 2 days later, the fallout hit full force. Jake called me at 8 a.m., barely containing his glee. "Dude, he's in meltdown mode, like full meltdown. Jenna's told half the family about Sarah, about the fake cheating story, everything. Your mom's furious. Your dad told him not to come over until he figures his life out." It was surreal. My whole life, Matt had been untouchable. Even when he screwed up, people bent over backwards to excuse him. Now, the walls were finally closing in. But Matt didn't go quietly. That afternoon, I came back from the grocery store to find my front door wide open. My stomach dropped. I stepped inside, and it was obvious. Someone had been here. Couch cushions tossed, drawers pulled out, my desk rifled through. Nothing was missing, but I didn't need to guess who had done it. Sure enough, 10 minutes later I got a text from an unknown number. "You think you're safe because everyone's on your side? Watch your back." The unknown number had Matt's sentence structure all over it. I forwarded the text to Jake, who said, "He's unraveling. Let him. Every move he makes now just makes you look better." Still, I wasn't about to sit back and do nothing. I printed off the screenshots, every piece of evidence I had, and dropped copies at my parents' house, my aunt's, and even grandma's. No context, no note, just the facts. I knew the family grapevine would do the rest. And it did. By the next day, my mom called, not to scold me, but to ask, "Is it true? Did he really make it all up?" I told her yes, and she went quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, "I'm sorry. I should have believed you." That apology hit harder than I expected. Meanwhile, Matt kept trying to get in touch. 3 missed calls, a voicemail that was just him breathing angrily, and finally, because of course, an email with the subject line, "We need to talk." I didn't open it. Instead, I sent one group text to the groomsmen from the wedding. "Next time he asks someone to stand beside him, make sure he deserves it." I know it got under his skin, because an hour later I heard from Jake again. "He's calling you dead weight and a snake to anyone who'll listen." I just smiled. Because Matt was doing all the work for me now. He was showing everyone exactly who he was without me having to lift another finger. But I still had one more move. One last quiet thing that would seal the deal forever. Update. 2. Alright, so, remember how I said I had one more move left? Yeah. I didn't even have to play it. Matt basically handed me the perfect setup on a silver platter. A week after the wedding disaster, I get an invite from Jenna's maid of honor, Emily, to grab coffee and chat. I was skeptical. Last time I saw her, she was giving me death glares during the reception. But curiosity won. Turns out, Emily was furious. Not at me, at Matt. Apparently, Jenna had confided in her about everything after Sarah's visit. The fake cheating story, the pre-breakup relationship, the way Matt had lied to everyone. And Emily was done protecting him. She pulled out her phone and showed me a series of texts Matt had sent Jenna in the months before my engagement ended. Messages bragging about how easy it was to make me look guilty, how she'd be better off without a mechanic for a husband, and, this one made my jaw clench, how he was just speeding up the inevitable. Emily said, "You want these? They're yours." I almost laughed. Oh, I want them. Now here's the twist. I didn't blast them online. I didn't send them to the whole family at once. I handpicked the most self-congratulatory vile ones and mailed, like printed on nice stationery, to the people whose opinions Matt cared about most. His boss, his college mentor, a couple of his old coaches who still called him one of the good ones. The subject line on each envelope? "Thought you should see this." Emily texted me 2 days later. "Your brother just got pulled from a client pitch at work." Guess the boss wasn't impressed. And that, my friends, is when I knew I was done. I didn't need to speak to Matt again. I didn't need to win. I just needed him to live every day knowing the mask had cracked, and everyone had seen the face underneath. Last I heard, Jenna's still at her parents' place. Matt's been showing up at bars alone, trying to convince anyone who'll listen that he's the victim. Funny. That was my role once. Difference is, I've already moved on. He's still stuck in the wreckage he built himself. About 3 weeks after the wedding, I ran into Matt for the first time since everything blew up. It wasn't planned. I was at the hardware store grabbing brake cleaner and a box of shop rags when I heard someone call my name. The voice was too bright, too fake. I turned, and there he was, standing in the middle of the aisle, holding a basket like it was a prop, eyes bloodshot and face drawn tight. "Noah," he said, forcing a smile, "we should talk." I almost walked away. But there was something in his face, desperation maybe, that made me stop. He launched right in. "You think you've won, huh? You think you've ruined me?" His voice kept rising, enough that a guy by the paint section turned to watch. "You've poisoned everyone against me." I just stared at him. "You did that yourself." That's when he lost it. He shoved the basket onto a shelf and stepped closer, too close. "You're my brother. You were supposed to have my back, no matter what." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You stabbed me in mine." Something flickered in his eyes then, something unhinged. "You don't get it. She was going to ruin you. I saved you. She? I asked. You mean Grace or Jenna or Sarah? You'll have to be more specific. His jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth might crack. Then, because apparently he needed to prove my point, he grabbed a stack of rags from my cart and threw them down the aisle. They hit the floor with a dull thud, but the gesture was enough to draw stares. Stay out of my life, he hissed, or I'll make sure you regret it. I leaned in just enough for only him to hear. You've got nothing left to take from me, Matt, but I've still got plenty I could take from you. For a second, I thought he might swing. His hands curled into fists. But then a store clerk came around the corner, and he backed off, muttering something under his breath. I picked up my rags, paid for my stuff, and left without looking back. Jake called me that night to say Matt had been telling people I ambushed him at the store. I didn't even bother correcting it. Let him talk. Every word out of his mouth now just dug him deeper. But that run-in made one thing clear. He wasn't going to let this go quietly. And if he wanted to keep playing, I was ready to make my last move count. That last move came sooner than I thought. A few days after the hardware store run-in, I got a call from Emily, the maid of honor who'd given me Matt's texts. She sounded almost giddy. You might want to check Jenna's Facebook, she said. I did. Her profile picture was gone. Relationship status, single, and the latest post, just 4 hours old, was a photo of her holding up her left hand, bare. The caption? Sometimes walking away is the only way forward. I didn't even need to ask. Emily filled me in anyway. After weeks of dodging his calls, Jenna had finally agreed to meet Matt for closure. It lasted 20 minutes before she walked out for good. Apparently, she told him she'd replayed every moment of their relationship and couldn't unsee the way it started, how it was built on betrayal. If he could do it to his brother, she told Emily, he'll do it to me. But here's the part that made me sit down and just breathe. Jenna didn't stop with the breakup. She sent those same vile, self-satisfied texts Matt had written, the ones Emily gave me, to every mutual friend they had. She didn't even redact names. By the next morning, his phone must have been a graveyard of blocked messages because he showed up outside my shop. Not pounding on the door this time, just standing there, hands in his pockets like he'd been hollowed out. When I stepped outside, he looked at me like I was the last person in the world he wanted to see. And the only one left who might still listen. She's gone, he said quietly. I nodded. Yeah. There was a long pause. He looked like he wanted to ask for help, maybe even forgiveness, but whatever pride he had left wouldn't let him. Instead, he muttered, I hope you're happy, and walked away. I watched him go, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to shout after him, or throw something, or dig one more knife in. Because the truth was, I was happy. Not in a gloating way, but in the quiet relief of someone who's finally seen the storm move on. He'd burned down my engagement, trashed my name, and expected me to just take it. Instead, I'd stood in front of a room full of people and lit a match under the version of himself he'd spent a lifetime building. Now he gets to live in the ashes. And me? I've got my shop, my friends, and the knowledge that I don't owe him, or his mess, another second of my life.